Good morning and welcome to the African American Heritage Club Presents. Our program's new name is Through Our Eyes. So I am Annie McCary and I am delighted to welcome you to this segment of the show. This segment will be airing in February, which is Black History Month. So got a nice little treat for you to talk about some Black history and also to talk about one of our longtime Laguna Woods residents who's going to talk about her career. So today we are honored to have as our guest a Laguna Woods resident with a rich and I think inspiring history in a unique and spiral field of healthcare. Our guest is a trained midwife who has centered on pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum care. She has served indigenous communities, including several years working on the Navajo Reservation. She also is an adjunct faculty member at the University of Illinois School of Nursing. So BJ, thank you so much for being with us today. I've got lots of questions and I know we don't have enough time to answer all of them, but I just wanted you to touch a little bit on Black History Month and midwifery and how midwifery is different in today's world than it was for midwives of color.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. And midwifery goes back centuries. And it's been crucial in the Black community because until recently, in the last 20, 30 years, there was no health care or hospital privileges for the Black community. Midwifery started with women that helped other women in the community. And actually, that's what midwife really means, is with women. So midwives are trained. Most of us are nurses or other health professionals that specialize in women's health. OB-GYN is the medical term, but we are more focused on a holistic approach to women's health care, especially during pregnancy and childbirth, because those things have not only a physical impact on the woman, but an emotional impact as well. And as you know, women are the centers. We nourish the babies and establish a beginning. So we really want the beginning to be the best part. So we start before pregnancy with lots of education and emotional support.
And education certainly is a key point, and what education kind of caught my ear because in years past, in the 40s and 50s, the education for midwifery, from what I could understand, was very sparse, and so they were kind of left out of the traditional training for delivering babies just because of the political environment at the time.
That is true. But education not only comes from the textbook, but just knowing herbs and culture, and again, providing that emotional support. Education these days is very extensive. Certified nurse midwives not only have to be nurses, but we have advanced training in anatomy, physiology, as well as psychology.
So, and that's really good. And so hearing that, what has changed over the years? I know education and training has changed, but has the culture or the acceptance of midwives broadened, or is it still kind of a stigma and not really accepted as a viable medical practice or healthcare practice?
That's really interesting because it's done both. It's fluctuated. Traditionally, midwives were well respected and supported in the Black community, but it has become very trendy in other cultures as well, because we finally recognize the need for that kind of support. Most of us know that when you go to the doctor, you might get to see the doctor for 5 to 7 minutes in a visit. When you go to see a midwife, not so much, because we want to look at everything that's going on with you. And we tend to be very sensitive to more intrinsic things about the woman.
Now, I want to jump ahead a little bit to, first of all, I want to know what drew you to midwifery and what did you see on the Navajo reservation that maybe stuck with you or reaffirmed your belief that midwifery is a discipline that's here to stay?
Well, that's interesting because I'm a midwife and babies are my business. I started out as a neonatal intensive care nurse, so we take care of all the preemies. And I recognized back in the 70s that something was missing for me because although we could save babies at younger and younger gestations, the aftercare wasn't quite where it needed to be. And just by happenstance, I was in England in the mid to late 70s and early 80s, and I met midwives. And they were saying that, we were discussing it, and they were saying, well, no, you should try midwifery. And that really resonated with me. And I was accepted to midwifery school in England, and they do their midwifery a whole lot different than we do in the States. They really focus on the woman. I mean, you don't even get to see an OB-GYN unless there's a problem. Midwifery is the basis for all prenatal women's health care in general there. And that stuck with me. And even when I was a nurse, I always worked at inner city hospitals. So I'm used to the underserved community. So once I got to be a midwife, I continued that practice. And over the years, you meet people, I networked, and I was lucky enough to get a position with the Indian Health Service. And their population is really, really in need of midwifery care, women's care, because culturally, the women on the res don't like male providers. And you have to see your provider when you're pregnant on a very regular basis. So having a midwife just opened up a whole new avenue of care for them. And it was very rewarding, lots of education. We found the babies did better under midwifery care. And it was just very gratifying. I was there for 7 years at that facility, and I'm very happy that I was able to serve.
That's really interesting, and it brings up another thought for me in terms of, because the whole infant mortality rate, I know is in the African American community, infant mortality and women's survival during pregnancy is one of the highest among all groups. And so being on the reservation, did you see similar statistics, similar mortality rates, or what was it like in terms of the holistic, bringing together the women mortality and the infant mortality and the whole childbirth experience?
Well, we made some strides in that, but we have to remember that being on the reservation is like being in America in the 60s.
Being in America in the 60s.
Yeah, it's very, very resource poor. A lot of people on the res don't even have electricity or running water. So it was of utmost importance that we could give them all the support that we could. As far as deliveries go, it's on par with the rest of the country. We have more issues with socioeconomics. The nutrition is not as sustained. We have food deserts there. So again, going back to the holistic person, we're running at a deficit.
Wow, that's really startling to hear.
And the healthcare facilities, like we're used to having a hospital within 3 or 4 blocks, maybe a mile apart. The closest hospital to where we were was 72 miles. So that could be quite an emergency event if you go into labor when you're that far away from a hospital.
Wow. And that brings up another point for me in terms of, because what you're describing on the Indian reservation is similar to the way that I grew up. I was delivered by a midwife, and we didn't have electricity. The nearest hospital was far away, and it wasn't an option to go to a hospital because of the Jim Crow laws. And so I can see some similarities there, but I can also see some pain in knowing that in one part of the world, things are so much more advanced, and then in other parts of the world, of course, things are better now in Alabama, where I grew up, but on the reservation, it speaks to how much further we really have to go.
Yes, ma'am. You are absolutely correct. And as far as Black midwifery goes, back to the education piece.
Or even the training, the training and the education.
Right. We're sort of limited because getting into midwifery school is a challenge.
Speak more about that.
90% of the midwives in America are white. In my class, some years ago, there were only, out of 30 students, there were only 2 of us. And that was actually a high percentage compared to a lot of other schools. I went to school in Georgia at Emory, and it was a very supportive program. I appreciate that. But again, for the support that we need, we really need to encourage more people to go into the field.
So what would be the attraction to go into the field of midwifery for a person of color? I know I was in the field of nursing for over 50 years, and I just went through by trial and error whatever programs were available that I could actually get into is the path that I took. And so hearing what you say about the low admissions for women of color in midwifery, what advice or what suggestions do you have for, certainly not at our age because we're at the end of ours, but if we were to encourage some of our grandchildren about the field of midwifery, what would be the inspiration for them?
The love of women. The love of women. Women are the basis for life. We are life givers. This is where the offspring come from. And encouraging young women to look at themselves and know that and want to be supportive. I do a lot of education, even though I'm not actually practicing with free now. And when I talk to young people, that's what I talk about, is that we have something to give. And even if they aren't into midwifery, there are other ways to support women in the healthcare field.
Yeah, and when you say that, that reminds me of someone that you and I both know, Mary Eliza Mahoney.
All right.
Yeah, who was one of the first Black professional nurses. And so I wonder, when I look back on her career and the struggles that women of color have had in not just midwifery, but any field of healthcare, it seems to be a struggle, and the low attendance and the low admission and the standards are pretty high, granted, but there has to be, I don't know, we need to relook at this. The nation needs to look at this, because if we're not taking care of our women and our women's health, and certainly if we're not taking care of the neonates, we can't evolve as a nation, because mortality is going to win over.
Exactly. We have to continue to fight for equitable healthcare services, and to encourage people to look at the healthcare, because it's for everybody. Everybody needs it.
In terms of other resources, back to the reservation again, what are some of the other resources that they were lacking other than health care and maternal and child care You mentioned nutrition. How about the education system, the school systems?
Again, if you think back to the 50s and the 60s, this is where they are. We're just getting over the boarding school situation where the children were taken away from their parents and sent to boarding schools. And unfortunately, the curriculum was not as helpful as it could be. They were focused on trying to make them be quote unquote Americans and leave their culture behind. They weren't allowed to speak their own language. So the focus of the education was, I won't say detrimental, but definitely not proactive. And that's improved some. What we need more now is funds, because again, the schools are not local. They may have to go 20, 30 miles to get to school every day. And on parts of the reservation, even though where I was Arizona, the higher altitudes, you have significant winters. And so that impairs children getting to school to get that education. So there are a lot of internal things that need improvement.
Wow. Okay, so then I'm looking at, because you answered a lot of the questions that I had. This is just so interesting in terms of, so in terms of the women, the ones that are of childbearing years, the ones that are past the childbearing years, what is the life on a reservation?
Most of us would think it was hard. They still do some farming, and they raise a lot of sheep, so that's animal care. They're up early chopping wood, fetching water, because water is very scarce on the reservation. And again, because the majority of the people in the IHS professionals are male.
Can you tell us what IHS is?
The Indian Health Service.
Thank you.
It's a federal department that actually focuses on the indigenous people in America. Now, the Navajo Reservation is one of the biggest reservations that we have. So it's parsed out about 1,500 miles.
Okay.
So that's a lot of ground to keep up with. But as far as the women go, like I said, they still practice some traditional medicine. And they don't have a lot of women's health care right now outside of the infant mortality and pregnancy issues. We have the older women who are past childbearing age. They're not getting their mammograms as often. We're seeing a higher incidence of breast cancer at a younger age. Typically, we think of women in their 40s getting breast cancer, but we've seen them in the 30s there. So providing that kind of preemptive care, getting their mammograms and routine GYN care is a very high focus for us right now.
Another question,
Mm-hmm.
did you encounter any barriers to your practice while you were on the reservation?
Actually not. It was a blessing because in that respect, a lot of their culture is surrounding it. And I was able to spend time with my ladies. And it was wonderful because, again, we're under a time crunch in general practice, but on the res, I get to spend maybe 20, 30 minutes a session with the woman. So we were able to get into a lot of things that were going on and allowed me to provide support and actually research other resources that could be helpful. So no, that was a wonderful experience in that respect.
I have another question for you. Again, because you said that you developed this relationship with the women, I know breastfeeding is used to be strongly encouraged. Was that still encouraged with the women, and did you find that they were open to breastfeeding?
Well, the mid-range women were. The younger women, not so much. But we set up in our clinic breastfeeding, lactation, which is what revolves around breastfeeding, lactation classes, and we had a mother's room that had all of the breastfeeding equipment and education pieces, and we could spend time doing that. So yes, that program was a wonderful addition.
Mm-hmm. And the women were receptive to...
Yeah, they come in sometimes, they'd be out grocery shopping and come over and take a break to breastfeed the baby. Oh. And we would have conversations. It was a very relaxed atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And so at what point do you, as a midwife, or do you hand the baby over to a different level, different service level, like the pediatrician or the...
It's a joint venture because once the baby is delivered, they will see the pediatrician at 2 weeks and 3 months. So when she's coming in for her 4 to 6 week postpartum checkup, the baby's with the pediatrician. So we work together very closely.
Oh, great. Oh, wow. What would you say, if you would compare midwifery, and I know you mentioned it earlier, midwife today versus a midwife in the 1940s? I know in America, well, most of America, with the exception of some segments of the South and the Indian reservations, there are resources available. And I lost my train of thought on that one. But in terms of a woman of color, which you said was a small amount of women of color, in not just the reservation, but in nationwide. Mm-hmm. And I know we have to do more education and more informing people, and being visible. And I'm sure that the forum for being visible is probably not as wide as it is for other aspects of care. So I don't even think there's a question in that. I'm just so in awe at all of the information that we've gotten from you. And I know we need to wrap it up here soon, but from the 40s to the 50s, from the 40s and 50s to now, we have definitely seen the field of midwifery more visible. In terms of women of color in midwifery, there's a disparity, as you were saying. Do you see midwifery as a field that's going to be standing for a long time?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, we've been around for centuries. We're just coming more to the forefront now. And I really like that. There are several organizations, the National Black Midwives Alliance, that actually focus on supporting those that are in the field and promoting the field to younger women. Mm-hmm. So there is hope there. And the ACNM, the American College of Nurse Midwives, actually has a separate division for midwives of color that we advocate for our education and outreach. So we're working on it.
Wow, that's really great, and it's really enlightening to know that there are organizations that are available to support women of color in the field, because it is a necessary field, and not everybody feels at home with the traditional medical model of labor and delivery and child care.
Right, and we definitely focus on using the medical model when necessary.
Okay.
But childbirth is a natural occurrence. It's not a medical condition. So we look forward to taking advantage of modern technology to make it easier. And
tell me about some of the modern technologies, because in my mind I'm seeing, a midwife delivering a baby. Modern technology has stirrups that when you go into the delivery room, you're up on the stirrups and you're in a position to deliver. So in midwifery, do you not have the modern updated equipment?
Now that's the thing. We have it, but we don't have to use it. Actually, that particular position fights gravity. We want all the help we can get from nature. Midwives have the option of using all of that, but supporting it for each individual woman, what's working for that woman. Again, you get to know your patient, and you help them understand what's going on with their body, how do they feel. You have communication, and you start this before they actually go to delivery. You have sessions, you talk about how you feel, you get involved with the baby, because we listen to the baby every time. So by the time you get to labor, you're a team, and you work through that. A lot of people think midwives only deliver at home. And that's not true. Most of us these days deliver in the hospital, but we just keep the high medical stuff, the stirrups and all of that in the background, and use them as we need to. Otherwise, we're working through a natural process.
Wow, DJ, you certainly have enlightened me a lot about the field of midwifery, and it's I've never known one personally, but I do now. And is there anything that I have not asked that you would like to share with our listening audience before we move on to we're sort of getting close to wrapping up, but.
No, but I'm happy that midwifery is getting more attention now.
Yes, and how is it getting that attention now?
Well, the mainstream culture has adopted it. They've recognized that it doesn't have to be an awful experience, that they can involve their significant other, because back in the day, your partner couldn't come in with you. Oh. It was an isolated experience, just you and a bunch of people that you probably didn't even know. And now the woman is more the central figure, and everybody is working to support her. But again, with modern technology, it's wonderful because you're able, if there is an emergency, you'll have access to everything that you need.
Is there one experience or one situation that sticks out to you amongst all others?
In my personal practice? No, I get excited every time we have a delivery. Babies are wonderful, and it's just a blessing that you're able to escort this brand new human being into the world gently.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, BJ. And thank you, our listening audience, for joining us. Before we end, I just want to highlight an event that's coming up for the African American Heritage Club for the month of February. And it's called A Day in LA. Friday, February 20th, we have chartered a bus that's going to take us to a tour of the historical Watts Tower. We'll have lunch at Dolan's Soul Food, and we will have a tour of the African American Museum. And so all this information is on the flyer. We have reserved the bus, and it will meet us at Clubhouse 3, and it will depart at 8:30 in the morning, returning in the afternoon. Reservations are required, and all the information is on the flyer. So thank you for joining us. Thank you again, BJ, for being with us and sharing some delightful insights and some history into the field of midwifery.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful week.